Right, I'm going to look at exporting and importing lattices. There's a couple of problems to solve. In this first video, I'm going to look at just getting the maps, the UV maps that come out of Bryce to the right scale for one of the material channels. I'll use the diffuse material channel. Then we'll go on to looking at getting the right maps out for other channels, which is quite tricky. Okay, so I'm going to get rid of the infinite plane. I'm going to create a lattice from the create shelf by holding the control key down. That'll bring it in default grey. I'm going to edit that lattice, new, and bring in blob maker just to create a very simple shape. And then I'm going to use this clipping zone. So what happens when I lift this clipping zone up here, which is the very edge of this bracket, is it takes this top half and will mirror it onto itself, and there'll be a seam where they join. So that's what it looks like in the wireframe. I'm going to enlarge it a bit so I've got a better view. Lift my camera up and point it down. So I think the blob maker works only at 8-bit, and the height maps in Bryce are 16-bit, so it's come out with this slightly jaggedy appearance. But don't worry about that, that's a different issue and sort of beyond the scope of what I want to look at here. I need to create a material on this that's distinctive so that I can show you what's going on with the materials. But it works whatever, and that's the point really. Once you've solved the problem once, you know how to solve the problem. We'll be moving this in various spaces, so that's the best word to use. But in order to solve the problem, I want to make life a little bit difficult for myself, so I'm going to lean it over. But whatever happens when we've rotated it like this, it'll still work. That's the point. So I've moved my shape into that position, and I'm going to create a quick HDRI light source so that we can light it all round with. And if I remove the sun as a visible object in the sky before I use sky, then that'll mean we've just got general lighting. I'll render in scene, and then I'll lower the quality there for speed. Cut out specular response, don't need that. Put that about 100. So I can just get a general all-round lighting from this. If it's rather blue, I'll just cut the saturation down there. I'll try 150. So that's just giving me some light. So I can now use my camera to look around this object. So here we go, that's our object there, and it's lit above and below. So we should be able to get some kind of handle on what's happening to the material as it goes around this object. The material I'm going to use, I'll just put a blob in the diffuse channel. We're only dealing with the diffuse channel here. I'm going to hold the shift key down to go in the library, go to where basic is, use this grid simple because it's quite distinctive. World space map is good. If I use actual selection, I can see what I'm getting on the shape, which would be great. And then I'm going to lower this value here, the scaling value, so we've got a fairly distinct pattern that should give us some idea about what's going off. So I'll just go out of that, have a quick render. So you can see the important thing is that the pattern's wrapping around this join point where the lattice is mirrored. So here we go, we've got it on the top. Right, let's export this object. So I'll file, export object. I'm going to, no, I've just done save as, haven't I? I must have hit the wrong menu there. Export object, right. And I'm going to use wavefront object, object mesh, export. That's lattice 1 object, save that. I'm going to use the default settings, so it's a fairly small image map it's going to generate. That's done that. And then go file, import object, go to where I've saved it, bring that in, just check that. And here we've got our imported object. I'll put it there on the left so you can see. Now there's a bit of a problem here because it's brought in an image which you can see relates to the pattern that's on the original, but there's some scaling issue occurring there, and so obviously something's gone wrong in the way it's rendered its map. I've done a few tests on this and you don't really need to see me go through that. You'll notice also there's a disjoint there, it's not joining over the edge as the original one did. And what's happening is when it renders the maps, it's rendering this as if the clip zone wasn't there. So what I'll do now is I'm going to copy and paste that object there and move it to the right, edit it, and then I'm going to drop that clip zone down to the ground. So now we've got the full thing, and I'll give that a quick render so you can see. Now I've moved it away from its original position. The pattern's changed because it's world space mapped, so that's a little bit inconvenient. So if we're going to capture this map correctly, we've got to do this operation just here. So that's something to be aware of. So what I need to do, I'll just delete that, is go to this lattice and copy and paste it, then edit it and give it the full scope of its clipping zone. And you'll notice that it stayed with the apex in place. That's important. So this part of the map's definitely going to be right, but what's going on under here is something we're going to discuss in a second. I'll pick this one up and move it to one side because obviously that's got in the way a bit. Take this new lattice, lattice 2, file, and I'm going to export this object. Again, it's OBJ format object mesh objects export. Save that. I'll leave it the same value so we're not creating super high density mesh there. And then if I go to this first lattice, because if I import the lattice I'll get this big shape. I don't want that. I'm just going to get the material off it. So go into the material lab, go into the texture source editor, click an empty blob and locate the one from number 2, so that's lattice 2 material, open that and then check and check, and then we'll give that a quick render. So now you can see the top bit of the shape's okay. If I take this large shape here and just for the moment I'll hide it, because I'm going to come back to that, you can see both shapes together. So hopefully you can see that we've got a match with the materials now. It's just a camera angle that's making things look different. I'll just move it forward, okay? But move the camera down and point it up so you can see what's going on here. There's this disjoint. See, this pattern here is actually from the bottom of the other lattice. So if we go to lattice 2, and I'll just bring this back into view now by unhiding it, and then lower my camera down, so you can see hopefully the bottom of this one. This pattern from the bottom of this one's been transferred onto the bottom of that one, but it's only generated the pattern so far, and then it's been clipped off. So we've got this bottom bit clipped off, and this top bit clipped off, but where the patterns don't join up, because this one was, original one was mapped in world space, then it respected the join, and what we need to do is get that bottom half of the pattern there. Now to achieve that, what I need to do is take this lattice and move it up along its axis. Unfortunately we've got a control here which allows us to move into object space. So if that's the y-axis now, lift this up carefully and align the bottom of this pyramid here, this what's a cone I suppose, with the bottom cone of that, and then export this, file, export object, and this is lattice 2 underscore base. Okay, that'll do, and that's exported. So to get this right, I'm going to have to join these two halves together. So hopefully I'll have got my top half. So this is the top half on the left here, and this is the one with the correct base on the right. So if I go to my top half one, I'm going to have to crop this. So I'm bring a crop tool in, and its width is 256. So that's going to be my top. And Control C that one, and then I can use Control L to bring it in as a new layer, and then carefully position that so that it's in the right place, which is a little bit fiddly. Hopefully I can figure that one out. Yeah, the pattern's not helping me. Okay, that looks about in the right position. And then File, and I'll just save copy as, and I'll call this complete map. Yep, just save those. Right, and then go back into Bryce. I'll get rid of that. Hopefully I've done my job correctly here. Go into the material lab, go into the picture source editor, find my complete map, which is now the fusion of the two halves, and check out. And hopefully now, if everything's been done carefully and correctly, I've got my top half. Obviously the resolution of these maps has suffered. I needed to export them at a high resolution, but I didn't want to, I just have you watching progress bars exporting textures, and the bottom half here, and you can see that they join up, they're correctly to scale, and that's right as far as I'm concerned. That's a pretty good export then. So that is the end of the first video, just showing you how to get the maps out in world space mapping so that the materials maps that are generated from the procedural materials line up correctly and are to the correct scale. The next challenge is going to be getting things like bump map out that actually is bump map and not what it does export and claims is bump map, but that's another story, so that's for the next video. Okay, I hope you enjoyed that and you'll find it useful.